Okay, guys, we obviously exciting day to kind of recap the work that's been done. 56 days ago, I think, since the opening presser, we've hired 35 staff members, and I think there's 61 new football players on our team. So it's been an eventful couple weeks here. I do think that we're fortunate that we have dynamic leadership here. And that has become more and more real to me every day that I've been here. I think President Jim Schmidt and our athletic director, Matt Rohn, have been incredible. The structure, the infrastructure that's been built that helped us transition was impressive to watch. You know, I think that it takes a team to do what we've done. And I think that some of the boots on the ground that when we first got here were critical. I think about Cliff Wood and Stephen Laporta. Really, in my opinion, I think that this is a forward-thinking administration. I think some of the things that were in place to handle rev share, to handle the recruitment process, those guys were outstanding. I mean, Jacob and I have been doing this for a long time, and I thought they were impressive and they were impactful. It made a huge difference. I think Marissa Manco deserves a lot of credit for how she handled the transition with the staff. You know, when you go hire the number of people that we've hired, she worked around the clock, not only with the CFP and all the things that come with that, but obviously we hired, I felt like, somebody new every day. And then Dallas Jackson was here on the staff. He's in player development. He's going to run our impact program here in the future. As former baseball player here. I'm not sure what we would have done without Dallas, to be quite honest. We're trying to put on our first official visit, and I think he's the only person in the room that has any experience here. So Jocelyn Rodriguez helps in academics, but she also came over and helped with the first few official visits. Ty Phillips was key. You know, just his ability to help us manage the transition once the guys got back from the CFP and the staff moved out and we moved in. I mean, he was critical. Hotel Madison and their staff was off the charts. We literally set up in there for, I would say, 3 weeks, like it was a bowl game. And as we hired staff members, we kind of operated out of there. They were outstanding. And then we became very familiar with the restaurant scene in Harrisonburg. I do think that our personnel department deserve a lot of credit for what we were able to accomplish. Jacob LaFrance is our associate AD for football personnel, and you'll hear from him. But his crew, Caden Seaman, Tyler Henderson, Ross, Kyle, Trent, that crew, as a whole, the volume of work that they processed every day, a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings, it was impressive to see. And again, we're talking about an unusual amount of turnover here on the roster. So Angela Williams came with us from Florida. She was a graduate student for us in on-campus recruiting, and this was her first show, and she passed with flying colors. And what she did in the amount of short time that she had was incredible. I think we were 64 official visits, something like that. Jacob will get specific, but 64 families that made the trip here. And I think we batted about 65%, so those are impressive numbers. Harrisonburg as a whole, the university community, this place is special. You know, I've been meeting with players the last couple days, veteran players, leadership on our team, and that reoccurring theme is that this place is special, and it doesn't take long to figure that out. So I think we look for a certain mindset. I think we're looking for what we're calling Duke DNA, and I think that players that want to win, be a part of a winner, contribute to a winner, players that want to be somewhere where football is really important, and more importantly, the academic piece. I think the degree here, the network of people you have access to, we've got a great product to sell, and certainly all the guys that we sign have a chip on their shoulder and have a lot to prove. I think there's a story behind each one of these individuals that you'll have questions about. But in general, we've got a lot to be thankful for. It takes a team, equipment, training room, video, academics, I mean, everybody, operations, the contribution that we got. You know, you're not only signing half the team, more than half the team for next year, but you're also hiring a completely new staff. So it's been a heck of a challenge, but this place is equipped to do it. And I do think that we hired well, and I think that this group, you know, we're hopeful that they'll allow us to continue not only the standard at JMU, but we want to continue to elevate the program in the future.
This, around the time of your hiring was around that early signing period. What was that like, getting some of those high schoolers signed while you were just coming in the door and joining this program?
Yeah, so the majority of those guys had signed prior to even word that I was going to be the head coach. So I think that's a direct reflection of the institution. I think Coach Chesney did a great job of kind of pitching to those guys the value of being at JMU. We're very thankful for that. And then Matt, I think he stuck to his word there with those families and those kids. But I think that speaks to the place that they wanted to be a part of this school, this degree. The concept of start here, finish here, come back here, I still think that exists in college athletics. Now, occasionally you're going to have an elite player that makes the move up. But in general, this is the type of place, as we go, we want to pitch that in terms of the self. So I think that group saw that, and certainly getting to know that group, getting to know their families was a challenge. Obviously, you're interviewing people all day, but in general, I think that's a reflection of the place.
Then once the transfer portal opens in early January, when you're looking at those prospects of coming in, how much do you value prior playing experience at the college level versus maybe being a guy that from a higher level that wasn't seeing the field too often?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we signed, I was talking to the staff about that yesterday. I think a lot of these guys, we know what we have, right, because they have significant experience and playing time. Now, how that translates as they move up, as they relocate to a new place. But yes, the beauty of the portal, and even some of the big guys that we signed that maybe are 2 years into a college program, maybe haven't played, but they have developed and made progress as players. So I think the players that we took that haven't played significant snaps, we had conviction about the mental makeup, the character, why they were coming here, and what contributed to their decision. I think there's only 7 players from the P4 level. In each one of those, we had a prior relationship with that helped us make a good decision there. So, look, one of the things that's worked here is the player that moves up, the lateral G5 player, G6 player, but more importantly, the FCS player, the D2 player, the D3 player that's moving up. So, culturally, I think that works. I think there's a gratitude that comes with that. And look, success leaves behind clues, and I think we learned that from prior staffs. And I think it worked here.
Yeah, in terms of the 4 players that signed today, I mean, did that process kind of develop like quickly? Was that like a fast process, or was it like just talk about that if you can? Yeah.
So, you know, I think once you get through December signing period, one of the things that you do is you go evaluate the best of the rest. So all the high school players that are left over, and the personnel guys did a good job filtering through that and then bringing those guys to the table. There were prior relationships with a lot of guys on our staff that helped as well. So those 4 players in particular, I think there was key people within the organization that knew them from their past. Whether it was Fordham or, you know, obviously the Deuce kids from West Virginia, we had recruited players from his high school in Florida from the past. Xavier McDonald and the relationship that he had with some of the coaches from that area. So I think each one of those situations contributed to that.
Yeah, when you talk about the transfer portal quarterbacks, you guys brought in 2 this cycle. I guess talk about maybe what the sell was and kind of assess the 2 as players.
Well, I think we have 2 good players, really 3 good players on the team. You know, we're going to have a quarterback competition this spring, but we lost a really good player, 2 good players in my opinion, and we felt like we needed to go get some arms there to create competition. So Arrington and Davie both have some experience, and I think both are unique and kind of fit how we want to play offense. So opportunity being the number one component, right? I think these guys are looking for an opportunity to play and compete and be the guy. And certainly here our job is open, and they'll be competing for the job this spring.
And the most players that signed came from the state of Florida. I mean, some of those players had signed before you joined here, but just talk about continuing to use that pipeline from your last stop.
Yeah, I really think that our approach is going to be to recruit inside out. I think that's how the dominoes kind of fell this cycle, but we're going to start with an inside-out approach in recruiting. We're going to start with the state of Virginia and the connecting states. We'll evaluate extensively everything within 300 miles from here, right? So, we've studied the history of the place as much as this cycle, if that makes sense. So, you talk about the DMV, the Carolinas, you talk about PA and Jersey, Delaware. We're going to be in Ohio a little bit more, and then we're going to try to take advantage of the direct flight to Chicago. I think that it's a footprint where we have a brand, we have a name that carries weight, and I think we have a football product that speaks for itself. So we'll be inside out in our approach. Obviously, we have relationships in Georgia. We have relationships in Florida. We have a direct flight from Atlanta, and then Florida kids will go anywhere, right? So, but we will build the team inside out. I just think there's something to be said for a kid that has connections to the place. The more people that they have in the bleachers that are watching, I think the more it means to them. So we'll take that approach for sure going forward.
How much does the only one transfer portal window, if you will, because since the spring portal got eliminated, how much did that change things for you all as you guys were going through this cycle? Is there a little bit more emphasis of, are you more particular with guys you get, or just kind of talk about kind of the differences with that?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be sitting up here right now if there was a spring portal, to be quite honest with you. I just think, to me, it made the job, you get back to doing what you do. I think that the spring portal is not good for the young people on your team, and it's not good for coaches, in my opinion. It's really not healthy for the entire organization. That break that you typically have in the month of May turns into a visit. You got a slew of visits rolling through here, and then you're losing players. You got to replace players. Another cycle of evaluation, recruitment, and visitors, right? So, and look, it doesn't wear on me, but your trainer, your equipment guy, your ops guy, your OCR people, your assistant coaches, anyone, your academic staff, every visitor that comes through here, the organization as a whole has to be on call, right? So I think it's healthy to go to one cycle. We know what the team that we have. Will there be some players available this spring? Yes, there will be. But in general, for me, I felt like the job, the game of football, coaching, what I enjoy doing it's one of the reasons why I took the job. So I think that we knew what we needed to go get. We evaluated what was available, and we did that. So we're at a place where we can kind of dictate the terms of how things go, and I think we did that.
You guys are bringing in close to a dozen players from the Division II and Division III levels. I'm just curious, what are you and your staff looking for from those guys that gives you the confidence that they can compete at this level of football?
Well, I think production. I do think that that process can start earlier. The communication with those players can start in December. So I think that makes it unique, right? I think you're able to evaluate and begin the process with that group of players. And look, I just think that once the height, length, speed fits, once the character has been validated, 10.8's 10.8, right? 6 foot and a quarter, 227 is 6 foot and a quarter, 227, right? Guy makes 100 tackles at West Alabama, he makes 100 tackles, right? So I think that as a result of the portal, okay, and you still have some lingering effects of COVID, there's a trickle-down effect of players that end up in places that maybe they wouldn't have 5-10 years ago, right? So, yeah, I mean, if you got a 2-time All-American receiver that passes the evaluation, I think you get the guy on campus and you see if he's a fit. And if he is, you go get the guy, right? So I think you got to just evaluate all the players that are available. So D2, D3, junior college, FCS, G6, P4. We're looking for guys that can fit what we're trying to do here, and certainly D2 has proved that you can do that. I'll tell you a story. I went and watched North Texas practice. Eric Morse was there this past, I think maybe it was November, and one of the things that he told me is that they had a ton of success with Division II players that had played a ton of snaps, that had a ton of production, and he felt like that translated to the G6 level. So Caden Seaman came over, our DPP from Colorado State. He had a head start on a lot of that D2 pool of players. That was a key contribution to this class. So in general, I think those guys, will prove to be good enough.
How small do you think that talent gap has gotten between maybe the G6 and all the way down to Division III with kind of the COVID trickle-down effect?
Yeah, I think it's, the depth that some of the P4s have has been depleted as a result of the portal, rev share. Certainly NIL early on, I don't think you saw that effects, but now that you have 105, you have all the P4s have a significant pool of money. Now you're seeing the depth kind of distribute itself, and then, okay, for us, it's like, who's the next best player, right? So, and we get the advantage of having a guy who's the underdog, right? The chip on the shoulder, something to prove. That would be my homework on this place, is the uniqueness of the mentality of the player you get here.
And then you mentioned recruiting locally is going to be something you focus on. You guys picked up a commitment and a signing yesterday in Micah Matthews, who played his high school football at one of the best in the area, or one of the best schools in the area. What did you like out of him once he entered the portal?
Well, first of all, Micah's a unique athlete, two-sport athlete. From the backyard, I think is obviously highly recruited. I think he brought length to the room. I think that the receiver position for us, we felt like we needed to add some length. Bill Yacht fit that mold. I think Xavier today fit that mold. And certainly Micah's kind of in the same category, being a 6'2" plus guy. And then, the uniqueness of being from the footprint, being from the hometown, I think is key. So I actually spoke with him on the phone last night a little bit about that part. So he's giving me tips about where to go and where to eat. So, but no, I think that there's power in, a guy. It's really important to the player. When you run out of that tunnel, if you're from the place, there's a certain amount of pride that comes from that. And I think it'll be valuable for our team.
When it comes to the offensive line, I guess talk about the balance of, getting guys that, have size, but also, you want guys that have the talent and ability at the same time.
Yeah, we had a run-in joke with the personnel department was we were signing the Great Wall of Shenandoah, right? So, but yeah, I think that we needed to replace some players. If you look at that group, there was some familiarity. Obviously, Tyler Brown and Noel Portnyagan had played for us in the past. Frankie Tenelaw had played for Coach Aiken in the past. So those were three that made a ton of sense for us. And then here comes D. Mitch, here comes DJ Fox, Josh Manecki, Caden Massey, and then the three high school players that were committed here. So just watching this group run around, I think that we've done well there. There's a little more height and length. That was a strength of the team, the line of scrimmage and edge players for JMU last year in particular. So, and the blueprint in this league is you want to dominate the line of scrimmage. And certainly that was a huge investment for us. We benefited from the coaches that we have, selling the development of Jaira and Cowie, and then obviously Coach Sell being here to coach the O-line was huge. I don't think we signed this group without that pedigree. But in general, I like the group as a whole. It was good to get some of these guys back, too. I thought it was big.
Yeah, and then just a little bit more about the defensive line. I mean, you had some guys that put up big numbers that say lower level as well. Yeah. So, just talk about that group.
Yeah, the D-line edge group, I think we went with the approach of the G6, D2 players that had produced that fit the height, length profile that we were looking for. And then if they didn't, I think the production was there. So I think Coach James is being in Western Kentucky. I think he had a head start a little bit about evaluating the pool of players that were there. You pair that with the, I think the personnel department, the job they did, I think that, we did a nice job there. I think adding some really good pieces. And there were some good players here to start. So, again, the recipe here is to dominate the line of scrimmage, both sides. And I think that we have the pieces to do that going forward. In general, I like the group.
Coach, we talked so much about the new guys, but how about the retention of keeping some very key pieces throughout? Again, guys announced that they were going to come back, but how important was that for you to be able to keep some key pieces to continue their momentum and the culture and everything that goes along with that?
Yeah, it's the most important part. I think I've spent a lot of time this week in particular, a little bit last week, meeting with some of the veteran players and talking about their experience. Some unique numbers here. 3 players on the team that have been here 4 years, 3 players that have been here 3 years, 15 that have been here 2, and 29 that have been here 1. And then you got 61 brand new guys, right? So I think that there's a kind of a standard, I'm using their words, right? There's a standard here, there's a culture here that is passed down, and it's, I think that's what, in my opinion, has led to success throughout these transitions. You go back to 2 years ago, 58 new players. I think last year was right around 53. The veterans that were here that were able to translate kind of regardless of who the strength coach is, who the head coach is, who the OC is, who the DC is. This is what we do here. This is how we do it. This is the expectation. And I would tell you this, man, I would say that the players, they feel a sincere obligation to represent this community. That's a real thing. The student body, the Valley as a whole, right? The makeup of the community, whether it's the farmers, the mill workers, the people that contribute to the university, the people that were here in the past, there's an obligation to represent the place, and I think that I've had really good conversations with Amar Thomas, Chase Regan, KJ Flo, Zach Greenberg, Jaden Mines, you know, Blake Kendall, some of these guys that have been around the block a little bit. And I would tell you that that's a real thing here, you know, and it's already started, you know, that process has already started. So in general, I think that's going to be the key for us is we got to build chemistry, we got to learn new systems, and we got to get to a level where we can execute from a football standpoint. But these veteran players that came back, I think were key. Wiz, Amar, Weathersby, the specialist, you know, Zach, Deacon Rawls, Petaway, you know, some of these guys that Amar Thomas, I think, was key. Michael McMullen was another player that had a lot of input. So I think there's a number of guys that maybe were on the fence that came back, and I think that's going to be important for us going forward.
What were you looking at in the portal as far as the human being? And you've mentioned a couple times now that this place attracts certain people. Talk about that a little bit and kind of go into depth.
Yeah, I think it's one of the I mean, I'm going all the way back, you know, Mickey Matthews, whether it's the Mike Houston, Kurt Signetti, Bob Chesney, right? Like and a lot of different ways to skin the cat, you know, I mean, like different OCs, DCs, different strength coaches. So, and that's what I ask everybody. It's like, okay, what is the secret sauce? And I think it's the makeup of the players that are in that locker room downstairs. So I think when we started the process of how we were going to rebuild the roster, one of the things that stood out was you wanted the player that was moving up, you know. I think it's like, and if they're moving down, you need to know why, right? So I think there's a gratitude component from, you know, it's kind of like if you've been flying private and you go back down to the bus league, right? So I think you know, you want the guy that was in the bus league and then he's flying commercial and feels really good about it. You know, crazy story. Some of these D2, D3 players, they're obviously away games on the bus, but they're sharing beds, you know. And, you know, that Hotel Madison's pretty nice, and you get your own bed, right? So, so I think for me, the loving football, you know, I think this place inherently attracts a guy who loves the game. You know, he wants to win. There's an expectation here. It filters guys out, in my opinion. Then they want to be a place where football is important. The game day experience we have is the number one resource that we have. I mean, we had players that played against JMU that signed with us, and ultimately, when they got the call, that was the number one thing was like, I played there. I want to go see that. I want to experience that myself on the other sideline, right? So, you know, being the Valley's team, right? You know, representing Rocktown, right? However you want to say it, right? I think there is a element here of this community has made this place a really special football experience. You pair that with the degree, the brand of the institution, the academic reputation that it has, and then, okay, now not only does the kid get the football experience that he wants, but the education is there, right? And you're getting a kid who has a plan academically. This place has got a unique feel to it when you walk. I mean, you drive into this campus, man, it's got everything that you're looking for. So, you know, I took my own unofficial visit, right? And it's that type of place. So, for us to be 65% hit rate is ridiculous. That's not normal. You know, we've been doing this a long time. So I think that, and we'll get better, I think, at presenting the place. And we kind of took that approach, was like, let's expose them to the community, you know, every part of the experience that they would have as a player. And the place sells itself to some degree.
We'll have Jacob talk a lot more about the class, but I want to ask you about the coaching staff that you were able to put together and how challenging was that? Some obviously you had prior relationships with, some you didn't, but how do you like the makeup of the staff right now here early on?
Yeah, I think it's a good group. I think that you're always, it's one piece at a time, and then you're evaluating the group as a whole, what it needs, from a, good mix of youth and wisdom. I think you need relationships in the footprint. You need a certain level of expertise, but you start with the character makeup. What is the purpose behind their potential to some degree, right? Like, what's the makeup of the person? How do they see the profession? And then can they help us win, right? Can they help us create unique culture? So the combination of character, competence, and then personality, right? So I like to have a good time, and this group has been fun to work with so far. And they have to get along with each other. I think that's a big part of it. So it's a good group, and time will tell how good of a group it is, but I do feel good about the combination of people that we have.